going to share with you something of what God is doing through this ministry of TLG. And as I do that, I trust that I can share something of His heart for His church to be family. My wife, Ray, and I, we've got 3 boys. They're back home in Yorkshire, so we're enjoying a weekend away in Cambridge. Oh, yes. But I thought I'd bring you a photograph of them, so, yep. They're cute, aren't they? They were cute when that photograph was taken 11 years ago. Do you want to see the update? Yes. Okay, here we go. Oh, I know they're smiling, aren't they? But what you don't know is that that's one of just 5 photographs that Dad is allowed on a 2-week family holiday. And the negotiation to get to that. But credit to the boys, they're smiling. But boy, it's different. Anyone else parenting teenagers? Great. We are not alone. So if you're near someone who just raised their hand, then on their behalf, I would say to you, like, any encouragement? Anything at all. Just tell us it'll all be okay in the end. But it is tough going. We remember the day when it was nappies and feeding. Anyone in that season? Yes. It feels like it'll go on forever. It doesn't. It gets better, and then you get to where we are now, and we've got Snapchat, we've got Fortnite, we've got girlfriends. Like 2 of our 3 have now got girlfriends. Ah. See, I can still remember, I used to arrive home from work and park the car and walk to the front door. And as I opened the front door, from the 4 corners of the house, the 3 bundles of joy, they would drop whatever they were doing. And they'd come running. And I would see them and I would drop to my knees to be able to hug all 3. And they would pile onto Dad and I would fall over as they welcomed me home. It's not like that anymore. I still arrive home. I walk through the door, close the door behind me. I shout, "I'm home!" Silence. Until I turn off the Wi-Fi. It gets them every time. But the truth is, these changes, they are tough. It is painful. We're having to work through the letting go of our kids into their independence much more. But you know, my heart goes out to those families that are having to navigate these changes in some of the toughest circumstances imaginable. I think about the 4.1 million kids who are growing up in our country in poverty right now. And the impact on family life is huge. You know, the evidence is that parents on low incomes say 1 in 3 of them skip meals in the holidays just in order to feed their kids. And then the epidemic of mental ill health that we come to see affecting every generation. Do you know, half of that has its origin before the age of 14. What happens in our childhood affects the whole of the rest of our lives. I think I first really encountered these issues for myself 20 or more years ago. I was a volunteer youth worker in a church in Bradford in Yorkshire. We opened a youth club and a crowd of kids came. So I remember one Sunday night, a room full, November night, a room full of about 40 kids. And I could see the other side of the room, a lad whose face I'd never seen before. And I could see he was like pushing and shoving his way through the crowd, scruffy looking kid, and I'm thinking, I've got to get to him. So as I'm making my way over to say, hi, how you doing? He punched me. So I'm thinking, I really want to punch you back. But I know that's not the idea of this voluntary Christian youth ministry. Instead, I got to talk to him. I got to find out his name was Lewis, that he lived with his mum and her boyfriend, 2 sisters and a brother in a small house on the local estate, a house where there was often not enough money or enough food. A life of chaos at home that had an impact at school. He was excluded from school, and we just sensed God's call to draw near to him, to help him. And as volunteers, we did that. And as we did that, we saw this whole family open up to the love and the care of the local church. They connected in to the family of God. And the great thing is that Lewis connected back into school. And then the school said, we've got loads more kids like him. How many would you like? So if you're wondering how TLG began, then that's where it began. But I had no idea of the scale of these issues. You know, right now, over 400,000 exclusions are given to children in our schools in this country in the past 12 months. And that is despite the great work of some brilliant teachers in our schools. Many of you here today, you're serving in education. You're making a huge impact in the lives of children every single day. But we know, don't we, the system is failing a huge number of kids. In fact, I think it's probably better for us all to own it and say, do you know what? It's our society, and this is not okay. You know, I used to think that school exclusion was just, you know, those unruly teenagers. But I've come to see that primary school kids are being excluded from school. Do you know, over 25,000 primary school kids, kids 11 years old and younger, excluded from school in this past year in our country. And then the number that I think is it's just the hardest to understand when it comes to kids who are 6 years old and younger. Do you know, every school day, 45 kids from a nursery class, a reception class, or a year 1 class are excluded from school, denied an education that meets their needs. Why does this matter? Well, people matter. People matter to God. And you know, this is a huge issue of social injustice. It's the kids in poverty, you know, because they are 4 times more likely to be excluded from school. That's why this matters. TLG is all about helping churches to be there for struggling children. You know, right now, we're in partnership with over 220 different churches, providing ministries to children who are struggling. And it's fantastic to be in partnership with C3. You heard it in those amazing stats of how much impact this church is having. We've got early intervention happening here. 5 coaches, each giving an hour a week to a child in school, but connecting to home and connecting families into the love and the care of the local church. We've also got education centers and a program called Make Lunch, providing food for kids in the holidays. All of that, an expression of God's heart of love and his heart of compassion through the church. Wherever we open the Bible, we see God's heart of compassion for those who struggle, don't we? And we see God's heart for family. Look with me at Psalm 146. He upholds the cause of the oppressed and gives food to the hungry. The Lord lifts up those who are bowed down and sustains the fatherless and the widow. Do you sense God's heart? Do you see what's important to him? He upholds the cause of the oppressed. How does he do it? How does he do it? He does it through us, his church. Practical help, being there, but showing love and care, being the place where everyone can belong, somewhere to call home, because we are family. Psalm 68 says, a father to the fatherless, a defender of widows, is God in his holy dwelling. And then I love these words. God sets the lonely in families. I bet you're wondering, what happened to Lewis, that first kid that we helped back in the day? Well, you know, by God's grace, one of the blessings of my life is that he's become a really good friend. Makes me feel super old, because I have to tell you that he's now a man of 38. But Ray and I and our boys would very much say that he's part of the family. At times he's lived with us. Other times he'll come over and spend the evening. He has his own faith. He has, like all of us, ups and downs. But it's wonderful just to see, by God's grace, what's possible. And you know, God's plan is for the church, his church, to be family. And for that to happen, we need a new level of reliance, on one another. A new level of vulnerability. I think I discovered family in a whole new sense back in August of 2003. Ray and I, we'd been married for about 4 years, and we thought that baby number 2 was just another big baby. But it turns out that when you're at the 20-week scan and the radiographer says twins, he ain't joking. It really was true. And so suddenly, family changed for us. So here I am with Josh and Dan. Don't ask me which one's which, because I've no idea, and we didn't know for most of the first 12 months. But I'm smiling. I'm smiling because they're 4 weeks old, and they've been so well looked after in the hospital. We saw them every day. This is the moment we head home. And I don't mind telling you that within less than 24 hours, I made an SOS call that I will never forget. It went like this. Help! To our mums and our sisters and our friends. Guys, we can't do it. We've had one night and we can't do it. I've got another photo. So, this is Ben with one of his brothers, my sister, and behind, Ray's changing the nappy of one of the other boys. And as you can see, the house is pristine. No, it was chaos. It was a nightmare. It would have been if it was not for our family and our friends. Guys, we need help, was the shout. And they came. We couldn't have done it on our own. We needed family. I want to encourage you today to discover a whole new appreciation of the family of God. You know, for some of you, you do not yet know Jesus personally. You're not yet a Christian. And you know, he's inviting you today into a relationship with him, but also into the family of God. And for all of us, this new level of reliance on each other. You know, whether we're the one making the SOS call, let's do that. Let's be courageous in just saying, I need some help. Or whether we've got the privilege of receiving it, we are family. And we're a family with the door always open, where all are welcome to belong. That's what I love about this church. I love the way you don't keep it to yourselves. I first visited 3 years ago and just hearing of the ministries, the way that this family of God is bringing love and care to the community is wonderful to see. And isn't it great to see what God is stirring up in his church across the nation? You are part of a movement of other churches who are saying, do you know what? This is not just for us. This is love and care for the whole world, the whole creation. In the time that remains this morning, I want to share with you 3 stories of how God's love through his church, just simply being family, is changing lives. The first is a church up in St. Helens, the Baptist church there. Just turn your attention to the screen. Thank you.
Children are returning to school across the UK as the summer draws to a close. For families struggling with finances, it means the welcome return of free school meals after the long school holidays. Our education correspondent Elaine Dunkley has been to St Helens to find out how some families have been coping over the summer.
This may look like any other play centre, but there is a difference.
First of all, we're going to have for dinner, we've got some chicken pasta bake.
At this lunch club in St Helens, many of the families who come here struggle to feed their children during the summer holidays. It's a chance for Brendan, Nicole, Cara and Jade to have a hot meal and play.
We do make friends and do painting, stuff like that, and have like lovely food. I do worry a lot about food not being in the cupboards as much as we used to have. It's been very hard for Mum, it's been very hard for my sisters and brothers, and mainly very hard for me to see Mum struggle.
For their mum Sarah, the school holidays is a difficult time of year. She's on universal credit. Changes to her benefits have brought hardship.
It's struggling, you know, to get the food in and getting in places. It's not good.
How much do you worry?
A lot, quite a lot. Every day I wake up thinking that social services is going to come knocking on my door, taking the kids away because I can't feed them.
Right, are you spinning or are you just going for it?
The TLG Make Lunch group works with churches around the country to ensure that children who usually get free school meals are fed during the summer holidays. They're also seeing more working families using the service.
So we know that there's 1.5 million kids on free school meals, another 3 million kind of close to the poverty line that we don't even know about. Have a look. It's a massive need. It's heartbreaking to see the kids that come in, and literally I was just asking one of the kids, we were talking about what would you do if you had a spare £500, and the first response was I'd get gas and electric. So kind of the needs go not just food, it goes beyond that.
For Sarah, any spare money is a treat for the children.
She's the best mum ever. She put 15 pence in my jar because I only had 35, but now I've got 50 pence.
The government says it has invested an additional £2 million into projects for poorer children in England during the summer. But for many families, every school holiday is a time of hunger. Elaine Dunkley, BBC News.
It's not okay. It's not okay that this is the plight of kids growing up in our nation right now. Imagine being Nicole with that kind of worry for your mum. And then we see the difference that just 15 pence makes in her world. Praise God for his church. Praise God that this ministry of bringing God's heart of love and compassion. He's reaching families like Sarah's. And our heart and vision is that we would reach many, many more. Well, the second story, I'd like to invite my good friend Danny Andrews to come to the stage. So just give Danny a warm welcome. Danny and I first met 11 years ago. This man is such an inspiration to me. So he's going to share his story with you now. Thanks, Danny.
So, my story. I'd grown up in a household where domestic abuse took place. My father would regularly abuse me, my mother, and my siblings. And it was quite difficult for me, especially him being a father of his own congregation. And oftentimes it would make me question my faith, why is my father acting this way? A father who preaches to a whole congregation about love, about, peace, about harmony, and about family. And it got to a point, that frustration made me then go outside looking for a sense of belonging almost. And I would go into a school environment and I would sit in classrooms, and the teacher would be like, "Why are you not doing any work, Danny?" And I couldn't really focus on work because I was always concerned about what's taking place at home. If anyone's dead, if something has happened, and if a teacher is to possibly walk in and say, "Danny, something bad has really happened." And this also led me to kind of look outside of the house that I was in, because of course I'd been excluded from 3 different primary schools, 5 secondary schools. It was constant. And leaving school, I was almost bored. I didn't know what to do. What can I do? It was then a few guys had approached me, and I got associated with the wrong crowd, got involved in gangs, and this was my way of where family. This is the type of people that love me, that show that care for me. I look after you, you look after me. And then leading from there, I was getting into lots of trouble. And it was actually my mum that was introduced to TLG. My mum, thank God for my mother, she didn't want to be that person that just stood by and watched her son go down the wrong route. And she was looking for so many different places. It was then when she encountered TLG, she said to school, like, "I found a place for my son. It's a Christian organisation. Can he go?" And it was kind of back and forth, but my mum was certain that she wanted me to be at TLG. I was contemplating it quite often, but then it got to a point I said, "Do you know what, I'll give it a try," because lots of times it wasn't working in all the other alternative provisions that I'd gone to. So why is it going to be any different, me going to TLG? It was at that point I entered TLG, it was almost like walking into the unknown. Didn't know what quite to expect. And then walking into TLG, it was almost like expecting to walk right back out. But that didn't happen. And this is where I believe God took place. It was almost like God was speaking to TLG about Danny, about his story. TLG then decided to get to the root of the issue, was asking various different questions. And also growing my faith with Christ, speaking to me about God. And I was also asking questions about God's existence and God's care to us. And then it made me realize at that point that all the decisions that I was making in life was totally the opposite of what I actually wanted for myself. I just wanted a sense of belonging. I wanted someone to care. I wanted someone to be able to nurture me. It was great because I had sort of a father figure at TLG, a guy called Mark, and Mark helped me. We went to the gym often because he understood that I loved the gym. And going into the gym, he'd be like chatting to me about my life. And great that I knew Mark even before TLG because he was actually one of my dad's friends. And, leaving TLG, I then went back into mainstream school. And my mindset changed. I thought to myself, no, I want to build upon myself. I've got all the valuable resources, tools that I need to be able to push forward. So going back into mainstream school, can everybody hear me? I did say I would be loud enough. Thank you. Perfect. Going back into mainstream school, I started to regain vision. I started to dream again. You know, from that young little boy that wanted to be a politician and influence so many people and do great in this world, I gained that again. I said I wanted to do something great for others. It was at that point that I wanted to take it a step further. I went to college to study enterprise and entrepreneurship. I said, this isn't enough. I want more, I want more. I then went into university to study business management and accounting. It was actually at university that I got baptized. Such an amazing thing just to be back and part of God's family again. Leaving university, I worked for a property company for a while, and it was at that point I feel like God had something more for me. He said, this isn't enough. I want to take you to the greatest extent. So God, you know, put in my mind that, Danny, it's time to go back. It's almost like the story of Moses when he ran away from Egypt, and his job wasn't done yet. It wasn't finished. So he went back to Egypt, and that was my story. I felt I needed to go back to TLG again. God was sending me into a new dimension. And then coming back into TLG, I then now work with so many young people today, giving them the experience, and some of them kind of say, you actually used to be at TLG? And I said, yes. They went, wow. And do you know what the amazing thing is? A lot of these young individuals didn't have hope. And then they've seen someone like myself that was able to go through the process of TLG, being that broken individual, and come out on top. Thank God. Thank God for that greatness. I go to many of the education centres now to work with the young people and also tell them my story, and they are influenced. Thank you, TLG, for all that you've done.
Danny, bless you. Thank you. Bless you, mate. Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, we praise God, don't we, just for his grace and his ability to turn things around. The final story I want to share is one on the screen, bringing you a taste of Yorkshire with these accents, so take a look.
Before the coaching, tough times, because like, I was actually being bullied at school.
Well, before Jo introduced herself to me, Ruby and me were both apprehensive about starting at Emmanuel School.
I was worrying like a lot, because it was like new school, like it was like going to be like massive and stuff.
Ruby would always have her meltdowns when I picked her up from school. She'd hold all her emotions in all day at school, whether it could have been something that had triggered her in the morning, and then when I picked her up at 3, it'd just be the whole world has ended, and it were hard on me and it were hard on Ruby.
I was like really worried about going to Emmanuel, because you know I've got autism and Asperger's, you know. My brother calls it asparagus. And for the millionth time, I am not a vegetable.
There were plenty of visits to Emmanuel and meeting the staff, going at busy times, going at quiet times. With Jo taking you on the visits to Emmanuel, that helped a lot because Ruby were becoming familiar with the surroundings. Jo, she's an angel. She's an angel. Because of my depression, the doctors wanted to give me antidepressants, and that's not the road that I wanted to go down. But going to church it's helped me more than what any antidepressant and bereavement counselling could do, because I know that God's got a plan for all of us and that God loves me.
Thanks, Jo. You just helped me in a lot of ways. Made me feel better about myself. Oh God, my tears. Made me feel better about myself. It made me feel happy. Thank you for all the things that you've did. I really appreciate it.
Well, as I draw my thoughts to a close, I just want to show you how you can play your part in enabling lives to be transformed for good. Like me, I know you really care for struggling children, and our prayer is that so many more children would be helped. And I just would love to invite you into that ministry with us. As you sat down, you will have seen a leaflet looking like this and a pen. If you could dig that out now for us, that would be fantastic. And see if you can find the pen. And as you open that leaflet up, you firstly see there the opportunity to keep in touch with TLG. We'd love it if you would just fill out those details there. That enables you to receive our magazine just twice a year and email updates. You can hear about job opportunities, our intern program, but most importantly, stories of lives being changed. If you can do that today and bring that to us at the stand, either in the cafe or upstairs, I'd love to give you a copy of my book, Out of the Ordinary. So this is the TLG story. It includes Lewis's story right up to date in his words and many, many other lives changed. So that's a free gift to you today. Just bring us that completed card. As you receive information, we would love you to pray for us, but I'd also like to ask if you would become a hope giver. That's someone simply standing with us in this vision, giving an amount of money regularly to enable this ministry to grow. There's an urgent need to help more children, and this ministry relies on donations from Christians just like you, who really believe that church can be family. It's something that hopefully everyone can do, because just a few pounds a month can make a massive difference. So if you fill out that Hope Giver section, if you have your bank details, please do fill those out. That will really help us. But if you haven't, don't worry. Just fill out the info you can. Make sure you do give us your phone number, and we can be in touch in the next couple of weeks to set that up. If you're a taxpayer, tick the box and do remember to sign the form. I trust, as we've shared this morning, you've been inspired in whatever ministry God has given you. But you know, if your heart is for struggling children, I wonder, would you like to get involved in the ministry here at C3 with early intervention that Anne leads? Do come and talk to us at the stand. Thank you so much for all that you are doing to love God and to show his love to the city of Cambridge. And thank you for your warm welcome today.